Grief is a really isolating experience because grief is like a fingerprint. It shows up differently for everyone. So if there's someone in your circle who's grieving, highly likely they're lonely.
How would I go about identifying people that are lonely? And then how would I go about trying to help them fix it?
It's in organization's best interest to make sure you're doing social things. Everyone feels they have someone on the team that they're close with, that they confide in, that they look forward to coming to work to be around. That's important for people, even if the job's not great.
This is really important. There seems to be a social connection crisis. We call it loneliness, and it needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with quickly. And Simone Heng, our guest on the show today, is a specialist in the area of human connection and has solved the problem through her keynotes and her education for many companies around the world. I know that people that are listening right now and are watching this right now, they want to know the answers to this because they want a solution. Please help us with that.
Sure. So I'm going to give you my 5 steps to explain how you go from meeting a total stranger to taking that person and feeling really connected to them so you want to stay at work. So first,
Okay, folks, let's talk about real estate. Now, a recent partnership that we've just established on the podcast is with AYS Developers. Luxury properties with high-end finishes from people that really understand the subject. Often in Dubai, you'll find stuff that is maybe substandard. With AYS Developers, you're not going to see that. You're going to see fantastic properties that you can buy, you can invest in, you can make your home on Dubai Islands and other places too. So go visit aysdevelopers.ae and check them out. I promise you it'll be worth the trip. Simone, thank you for coming to join us on the show today.
thank you for having me, Spencer.
I don't know if I'm really comfortable with a professional broadcaster being sat on the other side of the microphones to me.
Ex-professional broadcaster. It's not the same as actively still doing it.
So as an ex-professional broadcaster, does that mean I don't have to worry because you've lost your magic and you lost your touch?
I've definitely lost my articulation. Sometimes I see social videos, I'm like, oh my goodness. You don't have to. I've just let it slide. Don't worry. You're fine. You'll be fine. So it's just letting go of everything recently.
How long were you on the radio for?
15 years in 3 different countries.
Wow. Did you love it?
No, I don't think it was made for me. I'm like a super visual person, but I did it because I had huge fear of job insecurity. And if you love the media and you want to be the media, the only full-time secure job in the entertainment industry, even though it's not that secure, is being a radio DJ. So I just kind of did that immigrant child programming thing. And I was like, I want a stable income. And, it's discovered by Virgin Radio in Dubai from Singapore, and they brought me over. So I was like, everything indicated that, this is what you've done, this choice you've made is a good choice. But looking back now, compared to being an entrepreneur and doing what I do now, that wasn't that was like the starter husband. It was the starter husband. And then you worked out, okay, I think we can get a better fit than that.
Okay, so what do people need to know about you today to give them context on the value that you bring to people today?
I think I'm absolutely much more mission-driven than when I was a broadcaster. I'm obsessed with finding the latest research, and I sit on a board with a bunch of researchers in the human connection loneliness field, and then I take that and distill it for the masses because I believe we are in a social connection crisis globally.
Social connection crisis.
They call it a loneliness epidemic, but we're a few minutes in and I don't want people to turn off this podcast. So I'm saying it, and most people know it as the loneliness epidemic, but social connection crisis.
Okay, well, let's talk about that for a minute, because we obviously had what happened with COVID some years ago, and people were locked into their homes for a period of time and then locked into their countries after they were locked into their homes, and people learnt to live a different way. And what came with that were lots of opportunities for people to transition their businesses from being face-to-face to being online, which arguably some people benefited from. Then what came from that was the opportunity for people, once it was all over, to go back and work flexi hours. And, if they don't need to go to the office, they shouldn't have to worry about sitting in traffic and sitting on the public transport systems of whichever city they were in. And it was kind of hailed as a really positive thing to give people flexibility. And I personally thought it was a load of nonsense. I didn't buy into it at all because I need people. I need to be around people. But lots of people took it as a new way of living and embracing it as something positive. So when you talk about loneliness, that flies in the face of some of those theories, no?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. Firstly, what we know is studies have come out saying that the loneliness that we're seeing in organizations is not necessarily to do with having moved to hybrid work. So loneliness is the gap between the kind and amount of connection you desire and the kind and amount of connection that you're getting. So for many people, the kind and amount of human connection they desire is more time with their children. For a working mum, I don't want to be necessarily closer with my friends, people at work. I want the value and quality of connection with my children. So for them, flexible hours actually increase feelings of connection. So it's really interesting. Most people assume, okay, the loneliness crisis is because of this. The second thing is, and I was speaking to someone else about this, my friend's husband who's 55 as well, and he is incredibly charismatic. In fact, we joke that his wife is, his wife describes him, and I'm like, are you describing your bestie? Because you're basically married to two of us, very similar. He can talk to anyone. Now, for us, we say we love people. We had an analog childhood. Of course we do. We learned to connect. We learned to begin small talk off the smallest thing. Now imagine the generation that had a fully digital childhood. Their first opportunity to make friends in the workplace is not happening in the way that we had. They're deeply lonely. They're going to go to offline events. They're going viral right now where they leave their phone at the door of these social events for 6 to 9 hours. They are choosing to give up smartphones, not a lot, but the very smart of that generation. They're opting to get rid of their smartphones and get those old Nokias that we had in the 2000s. They know they're missing a kind of connection they've watched in old movies. They know they're missing the kind of connection that people and you and I are talking about. It's like a phantom limb. They want that depth of connection, but in self-reported studies, they're saying, I'm not getting it. So the reason I feel so passionate about this and the urgency of this is we're talking about your kids' generation. So if we don't have this conversation now, we're not in good shape for the next generation of leaders.
Really?
Really?
Because I look at everything that's happened as just an evolution. I remember when I was a kid and I was born in 1970 that we had this phrase.
You and J-Lo, both 1970.
She's older than me. Anyway, it was telly addict. You're a telly addict. And so we went from nothing to the radio, where everybody would sit around the radio and watch the radio, watch it probably as well, actually, but stare at the radio and listen to the news coming through or the show. And The Archers was something in England that was around many years ago. Then it became television and people would sit around the TV of an evening, and then people got more than one television in their house. And, I remember in the late 70s, early 80s, I had a black and white TV in my bedroom, as did my sister. And so we could go into our own private spaces to sit and watch whichever of the 4 TV channels were available that we wanted to watch. And that then just evolved into then the PC, and that given us arguably a television plus some other things to keep ourselves to ourselves in our bedroom to some degree. And then that progressed from that to laptops to handheld devices.
That's the big change.
But that's an evolution to me. Just because it went into my hand, it didn't, if I was sat in my room on my own, it's no different to something being in my hand, surely.
So the biggest difference that all the research talk about is something called asynchronous communication. It's the biggest difference with what has been affecting the social skills of certain elements of all generations, but maybe more young people. Sorry, Spencer, we are no longer young. So the generations under us is asynchronous communication. So that social agility, that charming banter that you still had when you had your television and your laptop before the smartphone, where you had to have friction-filled conversations in real time, where you had to sometimes, flirt with people, start conversations. Now everything is done asynchronously, and that means on demand. So you have a fight with someone in your school, it makes you uncomfortable. You can just walk away for 24 hours, come up with the best response possible, and then curate and write the perfect response. You can even edit it. And that means a loss of social agility. That means that those mirror neurons, that synchrony that you have when you meet someone and you really connect and you get along and there's banter and it's fluid, has been broken. Do you see what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree with it, hence the reason for me wanting to challenge you on this.
No,
let me explain why. You're a beautiful lady. You weren't me when I was in my late 80s going into a nightclub and having to go up to a complete stranger and ask her if I can get her number or buy her a drink or something and face all of the incredible rejection that came with that. And when I look at the alternative now, where young people don't have to go through, or young men don't have to go through the horrors of walking around a nightclub of an evening trying to get the attention of a member of the opposite sex to see if they could find someone to go on a date with, they've got an alternative method, which is they go on this app on their phone and they can meet people that way. So surely this isn't all bad.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's all bad. We haven't got to the great parts yet. But I'm saying if you're asking me what is contributing to these feelings of loneliness, is you and I, if we feel instantly disconnected, we have the social skills, we go out, we do our thing, we meet new people, we banter. But what if you never got the friction that you did in your childhood when you had to go to the bar and brave that social anxiety to ask that girl out? What if you never had the training wheels? So then you want connection and you don't know how to build it. And
But does that not take place in the classroom when you're a kid at school?
Well, I left school a good 2+ decades ago. So unfortunately for me, I'm not a mum. So I don't have those moments where I go in and I watch what's happening at school. I only am like the auntie to 25 kids in 4 different countries. And I get the kind of reports of what it's like. So I really couldn't comment on school age of how they're connecting. But all we know is that when they're not at school, they're alone in their room after school. And instead of hanging out doing after school activities, they're kind of on the gaming, talking to other boys in their class via the devices while they're gaming alone in their own respective bedrooms. And we need physical touch. When you boys used to tussle around, like as kids, and in Australia it would be called pylons, where you just always used to jump on top of each other. I don't know why. As girls, we were like, why are they doing this? We don't know, but it's obviously very tribal. Oh, no. There was me, nerd in the corner. This must be something evolutionary that the boys are doing right. So there's that physical touch. We know quality physical touch reduces a stress response, makes us more resilient, actually. So you also need the touch too. Like, play a few video games if you like, but boys need to also have that. And girls too, you need that tactileness as well.
To preface the rest of the conversation, I want you to be highly aware that the devil's advocate that I'm playing isn't necessarily what I believe myself from my own experience.
Yeah.
But I want both perspectives to be on the table here, so everybody can consider them.
Yeah.
Because some people out there are saying, "What a load of nonsense! I don't know what you're talking about. Loneliness. I can't stand people. I actually quite like my own company."
Yeah. There's a lot of
and that goes on. So I believe through lockdown, if you were with somebody else, you were forced to spend time with your partner in times that you hadn't spent. And if you were kind of optimistic and positive with your mindset, maybe that was a great opportunity for you to reconnect where maybe you disconnected. People are driven mad by the people they work with, given the opportunity to get work done rather than having to constantly have that interaction. And so I look at these types of things. And so when we talk about loneliness, are we just talking about a very small percentage of the population that might have gone through that? Or do you think this was a bigger problem than I'm arguing for right now?
So 1 in 5 people are sometimes or often lonely on the planet, global study. And I think, again, what you're talking about is like there were mothers that I'm friends with who were in a flat with 5 people, their mother-in-law, which is normal in Singapore, their husband, themselves, children, who felt deeply alone in the pandemic. Once again, connection and satiating loneliness is about quality and amount of connection you want. So even those people love to be alone, they need a bit of connection, just on a different end of the spectrum from someone like you and I who are extroverts and we love meeting people. So it could be reconnection if you really love your spouse, but they can also obviously sometimes make you feel disconnected if the marriage is not in a good place and you don't feel really seen and understood. So I think we can't broad stroke it, but I emphasize again, it is absolutely possible to be We see this a lot in Dubai. It was my experience also living in Dubai, and I write about it in my book. You can be a room or an event full of people, and if they're not resonating on that same values level or interest level as you can feel completely alone in that room. I mean, we've all been to one of those social and networking events where you're like, get me out of here, get me out of here, because they're not our tribe. They're not our type of people, right? What happens, which is bad, is if you are feeling that way all the time. So there's a big difference between incidental loneliness and chronic loneliness. Chronic loneliness is the one that destroys your immunity, shortens your lifespan because you're in a constant state of fight or flight. So you get cardiovascular disease, all these other illnesses. The incidental loneliness of Spencer goes to an event that he's forced to go to, and he's like, oh my gosh, get me out of here. Or all these people want something from me. They have an agenda, get me out of here. That's not bad. That's just your body going, okay, there's a bit of social threat here, get me out. But we should worry if we're feeling that way in every room that we go to. Yeah.
Can we link loneliness and talk about some data around loneliness and the connection or the percentage of people in that state of loneliness that then go into depression?
So we know that loneliness is a petri dish for conditions like anxiety and depression, yes. What also really scares me is that when you're lonely, the lonely brain is not rational. So for things like digital addiction or getting addicted to AI, boyfriends and girlfriends, for example, which we're now seeing, you're much more likely for that to happen if you're chronically lonely. And you're probably, if you're incidentally lonely, that's probably your impetus to even put that app onto your device. And so these apps are coming out of Silicon Valley to try and solve the loneliness epidemic. And they're being made for socially healthy people. The tech people behind it building it, they're not people who are human connection experts or psychologists or researchers. And so they're putting it out there for people like you or people like I am, but the people that are really going for it are really lonely people. And they're staying in their room with them and getting addicted to talking to an AI companion that isn't a real person.
Is it such a bad thing to want to be on your own in your room for the afternoon? And
no, I love time on my own. Okay, solitude is a chosen state of aloneness. That's very different to being lonely, which loneliness literally is your perception that it's being forced upon you, which is why during COVID, when we had social distancing and it was mandated in many countries, people felt lonely because like, I don't have a choice in this. But now people have a choice. Like, I need my alone time. We become also more introverted with age because our body says you're no longer of biological breeding age, so you don't need to be out there being promiscuous to find a partner and settle down. So that's very normal to become more introverted as you get older too.
How does someone identify that they're actually lonely? How do they know?
So a few things. Less than good quality sleep can be one of them. They actually use micro-awakenings in sleep to test how lonely somebody is. Holding your friends to a higher standard than is reasonable. So your friend is going to have to cancel because their baby is sick. And a chronically lonely person might be like, I'm cutting that person off because they're canceling, even if they have a really good reason. Your cognitive problem-solving parts of your brain are not as good. So just at the point where you do need to be charming in social situations, you become very awkward because you can't solve problems, you can't think quickly, you become dumber. And you have outbursts because you misread social cues. So because you're, I guess, becoming more socially awkward, maybe you're already been chronically lonely for a while, so you're not socializing as much. It means when you are with people, it actually can give you anxiety. So a lot of the time you'll be extended an invitation and you're like, oh my gosh, I've been waiting to be invited. And then you go there and the minute you're in a room full of people, you just want to go back home. It's too much. So these are some of the things. Spencer's like, oh my God, I didn't realize I'm registering on a few.
Just repeat them to me one at a time. Okay,
Yeah.
as the time.
Less than good quality sleep.
Yeah.
Holding friends to a higher standard than is
That blows my mind.
reasonable.
That one. Yeah.
Yep. So being very sensitive and hypersensitive. Yeah. What was the other one? Misreading social cues. And then we had once you're around people wanting to retreat and the problem-solving parts of your brain not being as quick.
Whose responsibility is it to fix it?
The global loneliness epidemic? I think it's all of our responsibilities to try and raise awareness about it. And, like the UK has a minister for loneliness, and there's one in Japan because of the plunging, birth rates. But I think if none of these people in government are well funded, they really are a headpiece. They're not going to be able to actually do anything. And things like polarization and distrust in institutions are driving us further apart as human beings as well. So on many, many levels, on the one-on-one level, on the family level, on the school level, the community level, right up to the governmental level, it's all of our responsibilities. And people are starting to realize it, but there's a lot of work to do.
So how, if I look at people that are in my community, in my network, how can I identify if I believe they might be lonely, and what can I do to help them?
Well, somebody has an outburst at you over something that seems completely irrational. You should check in with that person. Yeah. And you're always going to have someone in your circle saying, I'm not sleeping well at the moment. I know what happens to me when I'm not. When I'm sleeping less, that I think, okay, you might be a bit lonely. And people who are grieving, of course, are very lonely. I write a lot about that in my book and my life story. Grief is a really isolating experience because grief is like a fingerprint. It shows up differently for everyone. So if there's someone in your circle who's grieving, highly likely they're lonely.
How did you get to be so acutely aware and so interested in this particular subject? What was it that took you to that place?
There were three major things that happened. Firstly, I was in a radio station in Singapore that was just like the last legs of media. I could just see how the toxicity that comes with the media industry. And I know Mr. Daily Mail. You know all about that. But the toxicity that comes with working in a media environment, it was like a microcosm of the rest of the world. What we're seeing now, but it was 2017. This kind of like us and them tribal mentality, the bullying, the competing against each other, all of this. And I could see how it was affecting our product. Like it was the worst radio I'd ever done in my career, and that was correlative with how bad the office toxicity was. So I was like, okay, there's something interesting going on here. And then my mother has an extremely rare degenerative disease, and was the reason I left Dubai in 2013. And watching her forget her own identity, there was like not only a disconnection of herself, but of me being a good 10, 15 years younger than all of my peers, with having a father that was in the grave and now mother in the wheelchair. That was extremely isolating. And then the third thing happened. I went on air one night and I gave away tickets to a superhero movie. And I asked people to voice note into the station, if you could have any superhero skill, superpower in the world, what would it be and why? And this young girl, Gen Z, voice noted in, I know it's like not a really crazy sort of fancy thing, but I really want to have that ability to really connect well with somebody one-on-one, and everyone's so cold these days. And I'm not a super social person. I'm like you, Spencer. I was like, whoa, this is like an alarm bell. You have to look into this. Like, how can this be considered a superpower? You've done this your whole life. And from there, that was 2017. I researched for the last 2.5 years of my radio career on the side of my job, and then started uncovering more and more of this. And then, of course, we had a global pandemic, and then it became something that everyone talked about. Human connection became something that everybody was craving. And so those are the three big moments. So the world sends you clues. Universe sends you clues, I think.
As individuals, we can sit and look at things, identify them, and take the lead that you've said. As a business owner, I've got countless people from different countries, different backgrounds working for me. Some married, some single, some young, some old, some with kids, some without. And they're all a pretty good bunch, okay? And we try and make the office a fun environment, and we have some nice music playing. And
only imagine, Sven.
And we laugh and joke quite a lot. How would I go about identifying people that are within my organization that are lonely? And then how would I go about either, I say fixing it, I think that's a bit bold to say fixing it, but how would I go about trying to help them fix it?
Okay, so firstly, I think in all teams, there's always a runt of the litter. There's always somebody that's kind of half in, you're a manager, half in, half out, maybe on the edge of leaving. There's always someone in the cycle like that. What we know is employee attrition related to loneliness. That means the employee does not have a workplace best buddy. Therefore, they're not invested in what the team's doing. Therefore, the team is disengaged with the overall mission. The attrition related to people like that dropping out of employment is costing US organizations $154 billion a year. So anybody who's an employer listening to this is a problem that will cost you money. I mean, we have the American statistics for it. We don't have it for the rest of the world, but it will filter down.
There's a sentiment about this because this is really important. You just said $154 billion a year.
Yeah.
And by any stretch of the imagination, that's a massive amount of money.
Yeah.
This cost is attributed
to the attrition of people leaving and having to retrain other people to fill the goal of these people feeling lonely, dropping out, fill the roles, and the amount of productivity lost every time you're having to retrain that a new person for their roles. So it's in organizations' best interest to make sure you're doing social things. Everyone feels they have someone on the team that they're close with, that they confide in, that they look forward to coming to work to be around. Big issues with hybrid was people feeling disengaged with the overall goal because they didn't feel like, I didn't have that person I go on to work with and we have a good gossip before we start work, or I sit next to them and that's important for people. Makes them look forward to going, even if the job's not great, they're like, going to go in. And I have two girlfriends from my time here on Virgin Radio who I see to this day, 15 years later. I don't even live in this country. I'm the godmother to one of their kids, just on the weekend. The other one works for Dubai 92. We're super, super close. And they were my saving grace at times. And my mum had, just had a massive stroke and I had to do 6 more months before leaving. They were my saving grace, It's important. People need that.
I try and think about the physical cues. That's for me quite interesting because we don't always understand the behavioral cues. And watching people, I think I'm a pretty good judge of character.
But look for the disengagement.
Well, I'm about to say sometimes I'll be looking at and I'll be like, yeah, they're looking a bit sad, and that will be my reason for actually judging a situation, not even exploring it. I'd be like, oh, there's definitely a problem there, and I'll have created in my mind what that problem is, and I'll want
to you're the problem.
Yeah, you're the problem. But when we think about this, I think it's really important because you talk about disengagement. That's just someone that's coming to work and going through the motions. But that you would know that in the people that are direct reports to you. You wouldn't necessarily know that in people that were in other departments or 2 or 3 steps down the rung of that corporate ladder. And so you're only able to identify that in such a small group of people. So you're saying all leadership in all companies.
So if teams are well connected, there'll be someone in the team that will know that information, right? But if the team's toxic and disconnected, like that radio station in Singapore that I said it worked, not only were they probably aware, but they didn't care. So having a caring, compassionate, connected workplace culture helps that information filter upwards. But also, I have to highlight what I think is amazing about the UAE, right? You have people from all different parts of the world coming together to work. And what I love about that, because we know vulnerability takes transactional connection into something deeper and authentic, is everyone has the vulnerability of homesickness. Everyone has that collective thread of knowing what that feels like. And when I've worked in Singapore, for example, where I was the only one that wasn't raised in Singapore on a team, how lonely that was. And so one of the wonderful things that I think for everything people says that there are so many clashes of cultures and people, lean into that, like how fantastic that we all have that mutual understanding of what that feels like to miss your family. It's a great conversation starter too.
Do you think being an expat is going to make you more lonely anyway?
I think at the beginning it does, and then until you lean into it, you're like, this is awesome, right? Like at the start, you're like, oh, I miss you. I compare everything to home and I do the calculation of every bit of my currency. I mean, I write a chapter in there called Nomad about the serial expat experience, because I don't think anyone else who speaks about human connection or writes about it is a serial expat except for me. So I was like, well, we have to talk about this. And I was reminded of this. I've come here for 2 weeks. Week 1, I just put a couple of posts. I'm in Dubai. The amount of DMs from people wanting to meet up, and that kind of urgency of expat life of, number 1, first 90 days as an expat, you'll get the body's alarm. You're without your tribe. You don't have resources. Go and make friends. That will happen. If you've done more than one move, you would have experienced that. And then the second thing is the ease with which people reach out here in Dubai is exceptional. You don't see that in Singapore as much, but less people move to Singapore on their own. That it's much more of a family move to environment, whereas there's a lot of young people that come to Dubai and they're on their own, they're reaching out. And that's also the urgency of knowing, Dubai is going to be 2 to 5 years. So that urgency is also beautiful, but it means your filtering skills in the UAE need to be better. Right. You also got to filter better because it's so easy to meet people here, which I think is really beautiful. But we must always remember that it's the quality of connection that satiates feelings of loneliness. And if you're around people that don't resonate with you, it can actually make you feel lonelier.
But that then leans back into what I think what was important in the early part of this conversation, because we live in a country where, or I live here and you've lived here as well, in this country where your replacement family actually becomes your work friends, because when you come and join a company over here, the first people you meet are the people in the office. Someone might say to you, do you want to go for a coffee? Do you want to go for lunch? Do you want to go for dinner? I'm playing golf at the weekend. Would you like to join me? Whatever it may be. And these people become your friends. So this family is created from these people that you see every single day.
Exactly. And which is why I would love to study the people who come here on the global nomad visa, where they don't come connected to a company and they have to make that family without the default of the workplace, and wonder how they do that. Because the reason I enjoy coming here and working out of here for a few weeks, or I just got my residency, I'll do it for sometimes a month or so, is because the people are already set up. Like I have the friends, we have mutual friends, you and I, like it's easy for me. But how do you do that when you move here and you know no one, and you got no one in the office to kind of start building that network for you, and maybe you don't have the social skills? That's incredibly isolating. And of course, then you're going to hate Dubai, right? You're going to have a totally different experience.
Yeah. I want that. I want those people that come over here and their office and their family that's created in that office to learn, regardless of their background or experience, to learn to invest in making more connections. You can use it from one aspect to say it's good for business, make some more friends. If you want to try and give it some other usefulness, rather than being about lonely, find people that share the same hobby as you, so you can do your hobby with others, and so that makes it more fun. But I don't think people necessarily have the tools. I think a lot of the time people are looking for someone to solve that problem for them.
Yeah.
And when that happens, that leads people, I think, into a very dark place, because they realize then that there's no one's going to solve it for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
How if I was that person, I just arrived in Dubai, I've been here 6 months, I know 4 or 5 people from the office, and I've been out on a couple of company quarterly drinking sessions or whatever it may be, or events, but I am lonely, and I'm enjoying my work's challenging me, and I'm glad I've got the sun on my face at the weekend, but I am lonely, and I'm what's the word I'm looking for? I'm finding solace in a dating app or an Instagram, and trying to connect people that way. And I've heard about these different groups, these meetups and stuff like that. And I've been to a couple of them, and they're a little bit weird, and I'm a little bit intimidated, and I'm a little bit afraid. And what can I actually do? Is there a letter of rules? Because that I hate seeing people sad. I really, really feel for when people are sad. And I don't think sad is depressed. I think sad is just sad. And I'll give you an example, because I want to try and give this some context. There's a lady that I know that's here. I won't mention her name. She's in her
Please don't.
She's in her 60s, and last Christmas, I invited her to come and have Christmas lunch with us because I knew she'd be on her own on Christmas Day. And that just broke my heart, knowing that this lady who hasn't been married, hasn't got any kids, is a lovely lady, but she had nobody on that day. Or if she did have some people, there weren't many. And I couldn't have spent the day without knowing that she was on her own. There was also another lady that I know with her daughter, and I know that they don't have many friends. And it just felt wrong that on Christmas Day they should be on their own together. And so I said, look, all of you, we're going to have lunch. Come have lunch. We'll spend the day. And my parents had flown over, and so my kids were there. So we had a lovely day together and had lunch. And it was just because of inside of me, I was hurting for them.
Yeah.
And they might have been absolutely fine that day, to be honest with you.
But you've tapped into something that literally allowed Homo sapiens to rule over all other species, was our ability to mutually care for each other and live in tribes. And we have lost that. Our cities aren't built the way we used to, with third spaces where we would gather. And we have adopted, even in Asia as a result of capitalism, even in countries like China with the influence of capitalism, we have adopted more of this kind of individualistic, less collectivist idea of living. So it's all about the individual. It's all about me. These are my boundaries. I don't want to be around you. I want to be in my room. Get away from me. That it's gone a little bit too far. It's part of me advocating for this is it's gone a bit too far. And in terms of how of people do it, this is normally stuff that I share for Fortune 500s for their workforces, but it applies whether you're at work or not. Number one, use your commonalities to connect. Okay, just remember that points of relatability are your best friend, whether that is at a networker and you have to start talking, or whether that is you're alone in Dubai, you just moved here and you can't find friends. The dating app, I actually went on a few dates with a guy here a while back who told me he was on the dating app to meet friends. And I was like, why would you go on the dating app to meet friends? Like, just use your points of relatability. You know you like running, join the running club. So go to where other people have similar sets of interests. Therefore, they're most likely going to have a similar set of values. And values are a wonderful place to begin friendships and more. And that's why you see in a country like Dubai, you have the Filipino Association, you have the British Association, so that people have that thread of commonality that they can start as a jumping off point for. What you don't want to do is highlight in a very polarized world the difference between you and other people. That only makes it, I'll give you an example. I'm a mixed race person, and when I first moved to Singapore, both of my parents are Singaporean, but sometimes when you're mixed, you come out looking a bit different. And there would be taxi drivers that just love to tell me like, you don't look Singaporean, like just letting them know how not Singaporean I was to them. So actually creating that gap. We want to do the opposite. We want to magnetize, and smart connectors magnetize, and they do it on even a subliminal level. They will mirror how somebody moves their body. They will synchronize the speech. They'll mirror back phrases. These are people who make sales. Okay. These are sales secrets, right? But they're also, it's part of connection work too. You want to, I do this thing, it's so funny. When I'm with anyone in Dubai who's from Asia, they can be South Asian, they can be other people from Southeast Asia like Filipinos. I had my massage therapist the other day who I told you thought that I was Russian, and she was from Bali. And then I spoke Indonesian to her because my parents used to speak Malay, which is similar. And then she's like, oh, you are one of us, right? It's always about, and I'll always say, hey brother, hey sister, because I'm trying to, and by the way, most Indian Pakistani drivers, I say, thank you so much, brother. And then they see my eyes and they say, thank you, sister. Like, it's all about going, we're that tribe. We're more alike than we are different, and magnetizing us closer to people.
We've got a cost of 154 billion.
In the US alone.
In the US alone, let alone around the world. When you take that cost, I suppose for me, it's like, as a business owner, what is it costing me? Okay.
Yeah.
But I think this is really important for companies and business owners that are listening to this right now. If I own a business and loneliness is a cost to my business, or the outcome of loneliness is a serious financial cost to my business, I want to know how to make that calculation. Because if I can't make the calculation, it's vague. If it's vague, it's not quantifiable, and I can't fix it. So the formula is really important. What do we need to add up? So we know that in the UAE, 1 in 5 people leave their employer every year. So we know there's a 20% staff turnover rate on average in the UAE. Whether that be blue collar, white collar, C-suite, doesn't matter. Now, we also know that people leave, okay, for financial gain often, okay? And that financial gain in some cases can be small financial gain. We know that people leave because they believe their boss is an asshole. Okay, I don't have a great relationship. We do. We also know that people leave because the growth opportunities in the organization they're in aren't there, and they can get better growth somewhere else. Whether they've been sold a dream somewhere else or they believe that they can get a better opportunity somewhere else, they consider that as well. Okay, so this amongst other things are there. So people are leaving. If 1 in 5 are leaving, okay, let's say there's 1 million people in the workforce and 200,000 are disappearing and going somewhere else every year. We then need to break that 200,000 down and say, what percentage of the 200,000 are being impacted by this issue, this loneliness, and causing them to leave? So let's say that number was, of the 200,000, just let's say it's 50,000. So 50,000 are leaving. We now then, once we know that, okay, we now need to work out the cost of retraining, re-recruiting, retraining those people. Now, I know if somebody's earning $50,000 a year, the actual full-on cost to replace somebody earning $50,000 a year is $100,000. So we know some costs there. What we've got to really establish is what the actual number is. When we know what the actual number of employees that are leaving for that reason, then we can apportion the investment we need to make to fix the problem.
The other thing I was going to say, you raised such a fascinating point. A lot of the corporate social bonding engagement stuff, your offsites, your annual retreats, your all of this, it really is kind of like getting the spaghetti and throw it against the wall. Like, organizations do it because they believe, yes, I believe this is going to make our people feel more connected, less lonely, less siloed, but they don't really have a lot of quantifiable information about that. So I think that is also really important.
Okay, so I'm a business owner. I don't know. I put on quarterly events for my team. I try and make the office a fun environment. I try and know that we're working hard, but we're playing hard too. I try and incentivize people. I find that if I understand what someone's goals, North Star and mission is, okay, and I really care about that, if I can help them achieve what they want to achieve, then they're way more loyal and they work way harder. So that could be, I need to have this success and make this much money so that I can help my grandmother back home.
Intrinsic motivation.
Whatever it is, okay, I want to be the top person in the office. I want to hit my own goals. I want to know what I've got to do, Spencer, to get promoted. Tell me what I've got to do to move up the ladder. What's my next step? And tell me what I've got to do to get there. Okay, this is it. This is what you got to do. If I do this within this period of time, can I be promoted, Spencer? Yes, you can. Great. Understanding those things of people. Now, those things in my understanding of people within my business, when I know them, it's like a button. I can just push the button because I'm focusing what they care about. Does that eliminate the loneliness? I don't know, but I do think it gives a greater sense of belonging.
Yes.
And I think with a greater sense of belonging.
Yes.
When you and I met the other day for the first time and we have a mutual friend, I feel after about 3 minutes of conversation, we connected.
But what we did was we built rapport. And so I teach these 3 rules of rapport, which I think is kind of helpful for everyone, right? And I learned these rules of rapport from watching my dad, who was like an immigrant shopkeeper, stuck behind this shop counter for 7 days a week and just have to, for his survival, make connection with all of these different people from all different backgrounds. And for a city like Dubai, which is so multicultural, I think they're really helpful. So rapport is basically where other people perceive you to be more like them. So we're now living in a world where they would go, okay, Simone's a 41-year-old Asian and Spencer's a 55-year-old white man, and how could they possibly get along? This is the rhetoric, which is very damaging to connection, which is polarizing us further. So your job is to make the other person perceive you that you're more alike actually than you actually are. And powerful human connectors do this really, really naturally. But as we are in the era of social awkwardness because of digital addiction, it's worth mentioning. So rapport is when other people perceive you to be more like them. Speak to people like they speak to you. That does not mean putting on an Indian accent, okay? That does not mean mocking people. It's matching people in pitch, pace, tone, volume, Or in my case, the lady's Indonesian and I switch into some Indonesian, right? So if you have those second languages, you're doing that. You're closing the gap. Speak to people about the things they like to speak about. You know, you're in sales. How few people listen, and all the connection clues are there. So when you first meet a new person, actually listen to them first, extract what they're obsessed about, and then speak to that. And if that forms into a deeper friendship, then of course it becomes reciprocal. But at the beginning, it's not reciprocal. It's like when you and I met, we'd never met before. We're trying to find that. Luckily, you're a very socially fluent person, so it was really actually very fun. But not all our business meetings are fun like that. They can be brutal, and you can be trying, especially if you're the one trying to get a sale. They can be brutal. So speak to people like they speak to you, speak to people things they like to speak about, and use your body to mirror and match. So if you've got someone coming into work that you want to be friends with and they're hunched over like this, are you going to walk in and be like, Spencer's here? You're not. You're going to match them. You're going to match them in the way that their body's positioned, where they're weighted to. All these things they're being lost, but naturally good human connectors do this stuff fluently and effortlessly.
So should people go to class? Should people go to school? Or should employers take...
Well, I've made 3 courses, so with LinkedIn Learning and a few other providers. So,
But no, seriously. I mean, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And there are a lot of people right now that will be listening to this going, okay, fine. So that sounds great.
I will be teaching Gen Zs this in organizations around the world when you and I meet again in 15 years. I'm telling you. Like, all I do, I'm a massive nerd. All I do is read. Some of the best researchers in this field are my friends. We just had a call here from Dubai on Saturday night where we just talk about this. There are people in places around the world right now who are scratching their heads, who are up at night, obsessing about the problem that we can see.
There is a company that is now teaching people how to make telephone calls because people don't know how to speak on the phone because all they ever do is text. And so they're teaching them how to order a pizza on the telephone.
Exactly what I told you about asynchronous communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I get it. But for everyone that's listening to this right now and watching this right now, these are skills. At the end of the day, they're skills. Okay. We have to be honest about it because there are some people that just have a natural flair, as we both do, have a natural flair to be able to
connect,
to be fluid and connect. Yeah, we're not intimidated in the way that others might be. We can, if we are, then a lot of the time we can just take.
You do intimidate me so much.
Yeah, right, whatever. But there's people that want to know how to do it. So yeah, you just said. Hold on. You just said mirror someone. Okay, how do we teach that? Let's do that. That's one thing you can do. Let's be really precise and concise. Mirroring.
Okay, wait. Before I do that, I have the phone tip of the world. The best phone tip. Okay, the smile is to the voice what eye contact is the face. So if you can hear this podcast and you're not watching video and you can hear me smile like this, that's going to build oxytocin in you versus me just speaking like this, where there's no smile. The same as when you meet someone and they're not making eye contact with you, they're looking down at their phone. You're missing out on that oxytocin social bonding hormone. So that's my big phone tip. If you're nervous on the phone, smile. Start with the smile.
Smile while you dial.
A smile is to the voice what eye contact is to the face for building trust. And trust is the cornerstone of connection. We don't get to connection without trust.
Okay, I want to do, because I think this is so important. And for you, I know it's basic for you. Okay.
Curse of knowledge.
But I know it's really basic. But for people, it isn't. There's some people saying yes. I will ask for those people that are listening right now, watching right now, that do actually think they know how to do this. I will ask them to go and be very conscious about doing it tomorrow, okay, with somebody that they don't know so well at work or in their social community, okay, and literally try it. So this is what I believe you do, okay? When you meet somebody for the first time, obviously, critical that you have eye contact. It's critical that you shake their hand and you turn your hand upwards when you meet them in a social setting for the first time to say, I'm open.
Mm-hmm.
All right? When you talk about mirroring speed, at first, you're going to ask people a couple of questions. To me, the best way to connect with people is to ask open-ended questions and be genuinely interested in the answer. So you might ask standard questions over and over again, but it's not the question, it's the answer that you show interest in. So how long have you been in Dubai? And they say, I've been in Dubai for 1 year. Oh, wow. What prompted you to come? And be curious. And if you're curious with people, you'll find that people will open up a little bit more than if you're asking stock questions with insincerity. Does that make sense?
Yes, and you can also layer that on by when they are giving you the answer, repeat back in a summary kind of what they said. Oh, so you've only been in Dubai for a year. Okay, this makes you really likable and really memorable. We're living in an environment where many people don't feel seen and heard, even in their own relationships, even though marriages with their own children. If you can be that person to make someone feel seen, you are zigging where everyone else is zagging. So on a competitive work front, you're going to really, really stand out.
There's so much here that we can unpack with this, but as we don't have time on the podcast today to do so, are there classes that people can go to learn this? I nearly said, are there online courses?
There is. There's something.
But I don't think you should have an online course.
No.
I think
there is something that I've studied, but you won't like it because it's a bit weird. It's called authentic relating, and you literally go to the jungle and you like stare into people's eyes for hours at a time. By the way, if anyone listening and watching wants to do this with their partner to deepen the relationship with a partner, you can do eye gazing. So that's an exercise that's in the book. And eye gazing helps to 90 seconds or more make you just feel a deeper level of intimacy with people. Stop looking in my eyes.
Oh, yeah. I've been looking at you for the last hour.
In this context, it feels good. And so that is, and by the way, you can find an eye gazing meditation on YouTube or Spotify to guide you. That's all backed by science too. That's something that people have done for millennia. So you'd be considering it a bit woo-woo, but it's actually backed by the science too, which is what I really love.
So I'm a business owner. Should I put all my staff on a course to do this?
Oh, by the way, no, because some cultures, I only do that exercise when I go speak in America, because for East Asians, you get people to stare in each other's eyes like that in a corporate setting. I mean, HR will never call me again, so it's very, very culturally specific. So I've spoken in Korea, for example, you'd never get upper management to look directly in the eye of lower management and put them, it's very hierarchical there. So, that's also what makes Dubai incredible, is the opportunity to learn all these different rules and codes of behavior. And I think that's what makes this such a magical place. It's like the social agility. Dubai could, if you were interested in the stuff, and I made many, many faux pas in my 20s when I lived here because my prefrontal cortex was not fully formed yet, and I'm going to use that as my excuse. But you could become so socially nuanced by learning for each culture how to do things. And I think that that's amazing. I wish everybody was so interested in serving other people with their communication.
So Simone, I'm sorry if I keep pushing you on this. Okay, I want to give people actionable steps, okay? And I want people to really understand this. And you know so much about it that I can't leave this episode without getting that covered off. And I know I'm driving you mad with these questions in this way, and please forgive me, but I know that people that are listening right now and are watching this right now, they want to know the answers to this because they want a solution. Please help us with that.
Sure. So I believe the solution is that people need to actually understand how to build connection. So I'm going to give you my 5 steps to explain how you go from meeting a total stranger, first day at work, to taking that person and feeling really connected to them so you want to stay at work and they become your office best buddy. All right? So first you build rapport. Rewind to the beginning of the podcast where I gave the rapport steps. And then from rapport, you can start to build trust. Then you use your commonalities to connect, highlight how you're similar, get that information to build deeper conversation. From there, vulnerability is the only way we turn a superficial connection into a deep connection that actually staves off loneliness. So have the conversation. Tell me about your family back home. That's a great Dubai one, right? Have a vulnerable conversation where you reveal something about yourself. And then from there, move to acts of service. Now, that doesn't have to be service like philanthropic. That can be of service in your communication. So you're listening first. You're allowing them to feel seen. Your attention is fully there with them. Be of service in your communication. And finally, I think the most important one is self-connection. Have that awareness of yourself, because we maintain good connections by understanding our state. Every friendship you broke up, every crappy email you wrote in the office that built your reputation as someone to stay away from happened when you were in a less than optimal state. So there's my 5 steps.
Simone, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come on the show. It's been fantastic listening to you, and thank you for giving the guidance to people that really need it right now.
Thank you so much, Spencer.
This episode is proudly sponsored by Allsop & Allsop Mortgage Brokers, the leaders in Dubai real estate. Whether you're a first-time buyer, a seasoned investor, or looking to refinance, Allsop & Allsop's dedicated mortgage team will expertly guide you every step of the way, ensuring a seamless and stress-free journey. Now, with over 16 years of experience, they offer exclusive access to the UAE's best rates, personalized advice, and tailored financing solutions that perfectly suit your needs, leaving you free to focus on finding your dream home. And that's what we want. Experience the difference with Allsop & Allsop, your trusted partner in securing the perfect mortgage solution.